Welcome. If you're tuning in, maybe leaning a little closer, glad to have you with us. Today, we're not really doing a deep dive in the usual sense. Instead, we're going to recount some truly unsettling stories. Real experiences people have shared. They all seem to happen around hospitals or places like them, and they kind of blur the lines of what we think is real. These are narratives that are definitely captivating, sometimes pretty frightening, things that individuals found themselves caught up in.
That's right. And these accounts, they really push us, don't they? They make us question our own perception. How does the mind actually react under pressure or in these really unusual, maybe vulnerable situations?
Exactly. It's about that edge of the unknown and human vulnerability, too. Yeah. So let's get into the first story. This one comes from a nurse. She was working the graveyard shift, geriatric ward, specifically for Alzheimer's patients. You can picture it, right? Late night, hospital quiet. Just the hum of machines. And she was caring for these patients, getting to know them. There was one woman, Lena, who she felt particularly connected to, but Lena was always agitated. Every time a nurse went in, Lena would talk about hearing voices, and more specifically, seeing a man dressed in black in the corner of her room. Yeah, she'd even ask her roommate, close the curtain, I don't want to see him. Yeah. The nurse, she felt sorry for Lena, figured it was, part of the Alzheimer's, just tried to soothe her, help her get some rest.
Understandable.
But then, things shifted. About an hour or two into the shift, dead quiet. The nurse is in this small linen room, stocking her cart, doors closed, and suddenly she feels this. She's described it as a large hand. Just grab her shoulder. Oh. She spins around, screams, heart pounding, but there's absolutely no one there. Empty room. Nothing. She's shaken, obviously. Peeks out in the hall, empty too. Tries to compose herself, finish stocking the cart, but it's when she finishes, turns around to leave the room. That's the moment. She sees him, standing right outside the door, looking in through the little glass window.
The man in black.
The man dressed in black. And he's smiling. She just collapses, screaming her lungs out, wakes up practically the whole ward, and the man just vanishes. Gone from the window in seconds. Another nurse runs over. What's wrong? What happened? Our nurse, she's hysterical, asks, did you see him? The man. But the other nurse is just like, what man? There's nobody here. They checked everywhere. No one matching that description. Okay, but here's the really unsettling part. Connecting back to Lena. The screams woke Lena up. When the nurse goes into her room later, Lena starts talking about the voices again. She hadn't realized the screams were the nurses. So the nurse, still terrified, asked Lena, the man you see, the one in black, was he smiling?
The question.
Yeah. And Lena's whole expression just changes. She gets this intense focus the nurse had never seen before, and Lena just asks, how did you know?
Wow.
And then Lena starts screaming, get me out of here, he's coming, get me out. Other nurses had to rush in. So, the outcome. Our nurse got immediately transferred to another ward for the rest of the night, went home early, came back the next day, told the head nurse that was it, her last shift. She quit.
Can't blame her.
She said she'd never had hallucinations, nothing like that. Acknowledged maybe sleep deprivation, but this was, quote, next level. The hand, the smiling man matching Lena's description. It was just too much. An unexplainable, terrifying event for her.
What's so striking there is that shift, isn't it? It goes from being Lena's perceived reality, perhaps linked to her condition, to something the nurse experiences directly, something concrete and terrifying for her. It really makes you question the nature of these things when they seem to cross over from one person's perception to another's tangible experience. Now, how does that even happen? It really does.
Okay,
let's shift gears now. The second story is quite different. This one is very personal, rooted in a serious physical illness. A woman contracted bacterial meningitis down in South Florida. And with it came these awful symptoms, terrible headaches, confusion, sleepiness, nausea, and really frightening hallucinations.
A very dangerous illness.
Extremely. And even before she got to the hospital, the auditory hallucinations started. She's home alone, sick in bed. Hears a child's voice call, Mom, from downstairs.
Yeah.
Clear as day.
But she has no kids.
No kids. She drags herself downstairs, calls for her husband. He's at work. The headache just gets worse from moving. Back in bed, she hears it again. Just a distinct hello from downstairs.
Hear me.
Totally freaked out. Calls her husband. He hears the panic in her voice. Leaves work early to get her to the ER. Even while getting ready, throwing up in the bathroom, she hears another voice outside the door. Couldn't make out the words. She said she honestly felt like she was losing her mind.
Understandable, given the circumstances. So, at the hospital, they diagnosed the bacterial meningitis, tell her how serious it is. They noted the hallucinations were unusual, but, not impossible with something like this. Her husband stays for a bit, then has to leave for the night. She's exhausted, feeling awful, nods off pretty quickly, and that's when the quote-unquote dream happens.
Okay.
She has this incredibly vivid, intense dream. Her ex-husband, David, is in her hospital room, standing over her bed, saying just horrible things about her current husband, making threats, even pats her head in the dream. It felt absolutely 100% real to her.
Like it actually happened.
Exactly. So the next morning, a nurse comes in. The patient tells her about this awful, vivid dream she had. And the nurse's response just sends chills down your spine. She says, that wasn't a dream. Your cousin came to visit you last night.
What?
Yeah. The patient is confused, says, I don't have any cousins in Florida. The nurse gets serious then and says, well, someone who said he was your cousin David visited you late last night.
David. The ex-husband's name.
The ex-husband's name. So they call a doctor in. The medical explanation offered was, okay, the powerful antibiotics she was on likely caused delirium. Made it hard for her brain to tell the difference between being asleep and awake. Made the dream feel utterly real.
A common effect of severe illness and certain medications, that kind of delirium.
Right. But even with that explanation, she still had doubts. Lingering uncertainty. She actually texted her ex, David. Asked him, what were you thinking, visiting me, saying those things. His reply, he denied making any threats. Just said, you must have heard things in your sleep.
Convenient, perhaps?
Maybe. She acknowledges it herself, given the earlier hallucinations, the meds, the illness. Maybe what she thought she heard him say wasn't what was actually said. But that confirmation from the nurse that someone named David was there, it leaves this really unsettling question mark. What was real? What was the illness? What was something else?
It perfectly illustrates that delicate dance between physical health, mental state, and perception, doesn't it? Mm-hmm. Meningitis, the inflammation it causes, the potent medications, they can directly impact brain function. That delirium isn't just a feeling, it's a physiological state. The brain under that kind of siege can generate experiences that are indistinguishable from reality to the person experiencing them. It really underlines how fragile our grasp on actual reality can sometimes be.
A really potent example of the mind's power, for good or ill. Okay, our final story tonight takes us somewhere else entirely. Away from the patient experience into an abandoned place. This one starts, believe it or not, as a first date.
An unusual choice.
Definitely. Exploring an abandoned hospital. The person telling the story said it was known for being super cool to explore at night and super easy to get into.
Sounds like a recipe for trouble.
You can say that. So he meets his date, Francesca. Apparently she knew the building like the back of her hand. They go in, just phone flashlights. Dark, creepy, decaying hospital. Initial thrill, but also that inherent spookiness. They're moving through, and then they hear it. Down a long corridor. Sounds exactly like a door opening or closing. Echoes. They both hear it. Francesca, who'd been chatty, just goes dead silent. Instantly, they switch off their flashlights. Just stand there in the pitch black, listening. Silence.
Heart probably pounding.
Oh, for sure. Then, a bang. Much closer this time. And this feeling starts to creep in like they're being followed. They start hearing noises from the stairwell they just came up.
Oh, no.
Yeah, like someone's climbing up right after them. So they scramble deeper into the hospital, trying to get away, get higher up. Place is apparently a maze. They finally get to a higher level, find this sort of precarious spot to catch their breath, resting on a pillar, legs dangling over the edge into darkness below. And just as they start to relax a tiny bit, they hear a sound from directly below them.
Right underneath them.
Right underneath. They instinctively shine their phone flashlights down. And there he is, a man. Described as maybe 40-something. Black Carhartt beanie, black jacket, black sweatpants, standing right at the base of the pillar they're sitting on, looking straight up at them. And he's smiling.
The smile again, that's unnerving.
Terribly unnerving. And he starts talking in this really creepy, deep voice, just repeating, come on down, over and over, come on down. Just that. They're terrified, obviously. They manage to ask, are you police? He completely ignores the question, just keeps smiling, keeps saying, come on down.
Right.
That's when they knew they had to run. What followed was just sheer panic. The man doesn't stay put. He rushes out of the room below, clearly meaning to find a way up to them. They hear footsteps stomping downstairs somewhere above them, getting closer. He's actively chasing them through this dark, confusing building.
A real-life nightmare.
Absolutely. It was a desperate race through the maze. Finally, they find a broken window in the basement. They scramble out, terrified, the whole time someone's going to grab their legs as they're climbing through. Then it's a dead sprint across this huge, empty parking lot back to the car, slam the doors, lock them, just collapsing in relief.
I can only imagine the adrenaline.
He described it as a complete nightmare. But strangely, that shared terror instantly bonded them. Unforgettable date, I guess.
In a very traumatic way.
Yeah. Neither of them ever went back, needless to say. This story, it brings in a very real human threat, doesn't it? Different from the other two.
It really does. And it highlights that human element in what we often call horror stories. The first two dealt with, internal states, illness, maybe the potentially supernatural in a medical setting. This third one, it's about encountering another person in a frightening, isolated place where their intentions are unknown and seem menacing. That taps into very primal fears. The smiling man is textbook unsettling, unpredictable human behavior in a vulnerable setting. It triggers that basic fight or flight. It's a stark reminder that sometimes those terrifying experiences aren't ghostly, but stem from the very real, very unknown intentions of other people.
Wow. Okay. What a collection of stories for tonight, and quite a journey through different kinds of fear and unsettling experiences. We hope recounting these narratives, these real-life accounts, has given you something to think about. How perception shifts, how environments affect us. Remembering these were lived experiences makes them hit a bit differently, doesn't it? Especially when you consider the psychology or physiology that might be involved.
Definitely. They're powerful reminders, really, of our vulnerability, how tricky perception can be, and how the unknown can creep in, sometimes from our own mind, sometimes from someone standing below you in the dark. It's interesting to reflect on how you might process something like that if you were faced with it.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for joining us for this storytelling session. If these accounts gave you the chills, maybe consider liking, sharing, and subscribing to our channel, Horror Docs. We delve into more stories like these. Until next time, stay curious. And maybe, just maybe, think twice before exploring that abandoned building. Some things are truly unsettling.